Hi, welcome back to the Lewis and Clark State Historic Site. My name is Ben and I work here as a site interpreter. Today I want to continue our video series on building the team. Today we're going to be focusing on this man, York. As you can see up here, he's a man with no choice. This man has a very different set of situations surrounding his life than these other soldiers and interpreters that are all volunteering for this journey. York is a slave. He's been enslaved to the Clark family his entire life and probably grew up right alongside William Clark and is acting as his valet or his body servant on this journey. He'll be brought along without really getting much of a say in if he wants to come on the journey or not. So while he no doubt probably enjoyed seeing the different sites, meeting the different unique cultures, and took a lot of pride in what they were able to accomplish on their journey, York is one of these few individuals that didn't really get a say in if he got to go at all. On top of that, he'll receive no pay, being a slave in the Clark family household. And he also had to leave his wife behind. Lewis and Clark famously, with very few exceptions, only take single men because they knew how treacherous and dangerous this trip could be, that not everyone was going to make it back. York had that decision made for him. York would have joined the Lewis and Clark expedition when Captain Lewis and Captain Clark meet on the Ohio River in the fall of 1803. He would have boarded then, and from that point on, he'd be serving both Captain Clark and Captain Lewis, but also the purposes of the journey in general by helping the rest of the soldiers prepare for the journey. At Wood River Camp, Clark, we can already see, starts to transition York. He gets assigned chores and duties around the camp that look a lot more like the soldiers' duties and chores than those of a valet. Now, when Captain Clark does go to balls in St. Louis, he would probably take his valet along to help prepare his clothes and to kind of present that level of status that he would think that bringing a slave would afford him within those circles in St. Louis. But most of the time that York is here, he'd be set to the whipsaws, doing other chores, probably getting water, while also attending to the things that the captains needed. We see York's role changing quite a bit, though, on the rest of the journey. Basically, the further they get from the rest of civilization, the harder the work gets, the more equalizing it is. Now, I don't know that York would have ever seen completely as an equal in status to the other soldiers on this journey, and Captain Lewis and Captain Clark probably thought about him differently. He often gets left out of the journals for those reasons, because he's just assumed to be there. But York, at least for this time being, is going to have a lot more autonomy and privilege. He's by no means free, but he's going to have a lot more opportunity on this trip. He gets to enjoy all of the joys of this journey, seeing new sights, meeting new cultures and the different tribes that they interact with. And actually, Captain Clark will name a series of islands on one of the rivers after York. It's called York's 8 Islands. So he gets a lot of the perks of this journey, while also dealing with all the hardships as every other person. Grueling work from sunup to sundown, the mosquitoes biting on everyone, the hardships of exposure to the climate. York at one point at Fort Mandan will suffer from pretty bad frostbites outside of the camp. York will play an important role, though. He's not just the valet. Like I said, he's hardworking on this journey, and Lewis and Clark wouldn't have brought him along if he's just the valet. He is just as strong, just as capable as these other soldiers, and he proves it many times over. He does a fair amount of hunting, bringing in bison and elk and other things to feed the camp. And whenever Clark will go on these little scouting expeditions where he only grabs a handful of men, York is usually in that group of men. So this is a guy that's trusted not only to take care of Captain Clark, but also to defend them if they get into a scrap with hostile fur trappers, hostile Native American tribes, or maybe even a grizzly bear attack. Now, York here will be the guy that's relied on, in particular, to take care of Sergeant Floyd. Early on in the expedition, only a few months after they've started their journey, Sergeant Floyd will die of what we think is appendicitis. He spent about 3 days suffering with really bad stomach pain and a very high fever, and it's York that's doing most of the care for Floyd over those 3 days. York also plays an important role in the diplomacy of the expedition. York, of course, is an African American. He has very dark skin compared to the other soldiers and engagés on the journey. And that makes them very unique to the Native American tribes they're meeting along the way. They've interacted with the Spanish, they've interacted with the French, they've already met with a few Americans. So meeting with white people and fur trappers and traders is not particularly unique to them. York is. They've heard rumors of him traveling upriver faster than Lewis and Clark. And there are times that different tribes will send people to go meet with Lewis and Clark specifically because they want to verify if York actually exists, that a man with such dark skin could exist. And so while he is a bit of a novelty in how he's treated because of his skin color, he's critical in making sure that Lewis and Clark are able to meet with the tribes they need to meet with. He creates an opening, if you will, for these diplomatic talks to take place. Without York, they probably would not have made the connections they needed to, and they may have had difficulties in, say, acquiring horses or information on their journey. York does have a few unique benefits that he wouldn't have experienced back east in the more established United States. There's 2 points that kind of stand out to me looking through the journals and letters. One is the letter that Captain Clark will write from Fort Mandan to his brother Jonathan Clark in Kentucky. And in that letter, he lists out some of the things that he's sending back in the keelboats to Jonathan. And included in that list is 2 buffalo robes that are intended to go to York's wife, who's in Louisville. That's all the details we have about this woman. She's probably enslaved to a different family there in Louisville. And Clark actually allows York to send this gift of these very fine buffalo robes back to her. The other unique point of privilege or unique treatment for York as an enslaved person is when they're on the very west coast of the United States. They are standing there on the Pacific trying to decide where they want to set up their winter encampments. And the captains, rather than making decisions like they have for most of the journey, put it up to a vote to the soldiers. Which side of the river do you want to camp on, the north side or the south side? And York does weigh in on this vote as well. So for an enslaved man to be able to have a vote and have his voice or vote tallied alongside the other soldiers and free people on this expedition, I think speaks a lot about how he was viewed within this expedition, within the journey. Now you may be wondering why I've not talked about York's life much outside of the expedition. For this video, I wanted to focus specifically on how he was helping the expedition accomplish its goals and show how without him they may have had a tougher time along the way. But there's a lot more to the story to tell, and because of that, I decided to break this into a few different videos. So if you keep an eye on our YouTube page, our Facebook page, and on our website, you'll see that we'll be updating some other videos within the Building the Team series, talking about York both before and after the expedition, and his relationship with Clark and how this journey really did change that relationship. I want to thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and give us a like or subscribe, and you can get a look at future videos that we post within this series. Thank you for watching.